Okay, been doing a little bit of work off camera. Got the front timing cover cleaned up. It's in bare metal. This is the one that came off of the newer motor, the Series 3. Went ahead and masked off some areas. This is where the water pump goes. This is where the front crankshaft seal is. And I already put a brand new front crankshaft seal in there. I cleaned up the oil filter adapter here. This is the adapter for the F-bodies. And went ahead and just did my standard paint the heads of the bolts kind of thing. I know that this probably makes some people roll their eyes, but I've had good success with it. As long as you're careful putting them in and you don't rub all the paint off. I got a pretty thick layer on there. These will hold up for quite a while, at least they have for me. I don't live in like the Northeast or anything, so I wouldn't probably do it in any Rust Belt states. Without it, these will corrode. These were corroded when I took them off of the old motor. I went ahead and cleaned them up and just painted them. Same thing with the cam sensor bolt. I got a brand new oil pressure sensor because I stole the one off of this engine and put it on my son's car. Went ahead and cleaned up the oil pump, and this is the one that was in the Series 3 motor, so it's going back in. And this is that modified oil pump cover. So that all goes together, the screws for that, various gaskets to make this work. Once all that's done, I'll come around and put the timing cover on, and then I'm gonna push this thing out towards the front of the shop here and hose it down with paint. Here we go. It's been about a day since I left off, and you can tell a lot's changed. I think where I left off is me putting on the timing cover. Obviously now you can see some other stuff's been installed. So I got the timing cover on, made sure everything was masked off real good, and then laid down a coat of VHT primer and that Seymour brand stuff for the Chevy orange color, and then hit it with some VHT clear. She's ready to go. It came out really nice. I was originally planning to just reuse the water pump that I had on here. However, I just so happened to have a new one in stock for these engines, and I needed the gasket out of it, so I was like, whatever, I'll throw the old one in the parts bin in case I need to replace a water pump. I just went ahead and threw the brand new one on here. I think it looks good with the natural aluminum color. And then down here, I got the oil filter adapter put on. Still got some work to do here. I still have not put the push rods in. As you can see, I still need to clean the oil pan and get that ready to be installed. Once that's installed, then I can put the lifters in. I just know the lifters are going to be dripping oil and stuff, so if I throw those in there now, it's just going to end up on the floor underneath. These are the original torque to yield bolts that are holding the rockers. I took these ones out of the engine that was in the Camaro, and these are reusable rocker arm bolts, so we'll be swapping out for those. I've got to clean up the fuel rails, fuel injectors. I mean, it just goes on and on. Once I'm prepared to start installing everything, I'll just set this thing up on a time lapse. You can watch me put this thing back together. Right now, I think it looks totally dope. Like the engine looks like a classic small block Chevy right now, but as we start adding parts, there's going to be more modern things that go on the front. There's like a big hibachi thing here with like pulleys and crap. And then also the alternator sits up here and a bunch of other things that are really going to make this thing look stupid. Lots of work to do. I just wanted to get you an update, and guess I'll come back when I've got more. All right, going underneath the car for the first time in a long time. I'll show you a couple of things. Everything under here is stuff you already saw in the last video. This car is identical to my son's car. So I have like a janky intake here because the stock intake didn't come with the car, and the one that I got from that original donor was busted and it sucked. So I got this cheap POS from eBay, and that was the best way I could figure out how to get it to fit in there. I'll probably cut it down and see if I can refit it so that this is up in the engine bay more. I don't really like it down here where it's picking up all kinds of rocks and dirt and crap from the road. Oh, up here you can see there's my Coney shocks, BMR springs. We've got energy suspension links, energy suspension sway bar bushings. Back here we've got the UMI trailing arms and UMI panhard bar here. That's all holding up well. The BMR springs and Coney shocks again. All right, I'm gonna get started. I'm not gonna film all this crap. You already see me do this back end, but just gonna remove all this stuff all the way up to the transmission, and then basically go up top. I gotta drain the coolant, gotta drain any other fluids up there, and like oil, coolant, all that. Then it's gonna be wire harness, take that down, unplug that. Basically, wire harness is gonna lay right on top of the motor. Then it'll be time to come under here. I'll undo these cross member bolts, and then you've got these big daddy bolts here, one up here, one up front right there, and that's the subframe or the K member that the engine's sitting on. And then I'm going to drop it all down here on the floor and lift the car off the motor. All right, here we go. Okay, as you just saw, real simple. Engine, front suspension, front K-member, transmission, they all just come right out through the bottom. And I caught it here on these dollies, and I got one back here underneath the back of the transmission. And I can just wheel this thing around the shop all I want. I got a little bit of mess to clean up here since the cat's running around in here. I don't want him to get into this coolant. So I'm gonna move this thing out of the way, mop it up, and then we'll be working on getting this thing off of this cradle and swapping over some parts to the new motor. All right, hang in there. Got it all stripped down, and I'm already making some discoveries. I might have mentioned it in a previous clip, but in the months leading up to the engine totally giving out on it, I was getting a lot of smoking out of the exhaust. Like, it would be fine if I was just cruising down the road, but as soon as I'd stop at a stoplight for, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'd take off, I mean, it looked like Batman laying a smoke screen for like a minute. Like, it was just like a puff of embarrassing, smelly white smoke.
Your car's on fire.
Car's on fire. No, it's just a little oil.
And I was like, yeah, this engine's probably about had it. But it didn't do it all the time, so I was able to put it out of mind. Well, here's my discovery. I had sent these heads to a machine shop that's no longer in business. They resurfaced it for me, ground all the valves, and I think they put new valve seats in it. And then they did all the seals in here. So just for comparison, inside there, that, I don't know if you guys can see that.
Do you see it?
See the little green thing inside? That is the valve seal. Now, if you were paying attention when I did the install, this one and this one and this one You notice that I push those all the way down and they seal around the stem at the bottom of the stem. I don't know if you can tell what's wrong with this picture, but that valve seal is all the way at the top of the valve stem and not sealing at the base where it's supposed to be. The one just beyond it, you can see, is where it's supposed to be. Let's see if I can get a light in here, maybe backlight them or something so you can see. Not really sure, but you can really kind of tell right there that it's not right. Well, I'm looking at these, and this one, so it's all the exhaust valves, it looks like. Exhaust valve, the seal is off. Here's another exhaust valve where the seal's off. Same here, exhaust valve, seal is off, and that was where all the oil was coming from. All the intakes look okay. So the other thing I'm noticing here is these seals typically, at least the ones I've seen, come in two different colors. I don't know if you can tell from looking in there, but your exhaust valve seals are green and your intake valve seals are blue. And I don't know if they're a different size, different clamping force, but these ones are just all blue. And I remember the machine shop asking me if I had valve seals for this so that they can put them in, which I thought was a weird request. I was thinking, why don't you have valve seals if you're doing this work all the time? And he explained to me that they were having a hard time getting parts in. This was around 2021, so maybe it was no supply chain stuff. These are all blue, and I'm pretty sure I didn't give him all blue seals, so I don't know if they got them all mixed up or what, but that explains a lot. So interesting stuff. Now we know where the failure was. That's this torn down. I think I'm going to call it for the night. See you guys probably tomorrow. All right. Finally, I managed to get the oil pan for this thing cleaned up, and I went ahead and hit it with another coat of black paint. Had to knock a couple of dents out of this thing from me. I don't know, I think I hit it with a jack or something once. Anyway, no big deal, no leaks or cracks or anything weird, so we'll reuse it. We'll get this thing rolled over, get the pan installed. Also, I'm going to be putting in a brand new pickup tube. Let's see if we get it open for you here. Anyway, I'm not really sure if there's a difference between the front drive pickup tube and the rear drive version, but just to be safe, I went ahead and got the rear drive version. At least they actually come up with different part numbers, so I'm guessing they're slightly different, and that would make sense considering the shape of the oil pan. The old one, you might be asking, why you just clean out the one that came out of the broken motor? Well, the reason why is because when I rolled that one over, this screen was all full of weird metal shavings. I don't even know where the hell they came from, and some other stuff, and I just didn't want to risk it. I think it was like $40 for this. Better safe than sorry. So we'll be sticking this on there. I'm going to take the old one off. This actually came with a fresh gasket for it, and we'll get that on there. Something to note that I've learned just from working on these 3800s, the Camaro oil pan gasket is a little more than just a gasket. It's an actual windage tray. I noticed on the front drive ones, at least the ones I took apart, this wasn't there. The windage tray was actually built into the pan, so that was kind of interesting. So anyway, after doing oil pans on these engines a few times, I've learned that it seems like no matter who you go with for manufacturer on these, the holes are not going to line up absolutely perfect. Typically, I just kind of get it as close as I can, and I just start pushing bolts in, and then it kind of settles itself. It looks like one that you can probably just put in dry. It's got this nice silicone bead all the way around it on both sides. When I roll this thing over, you'll see me putting silicone on, and really it's just right where the timing cover meets the front of the engine. Good idea to put some silicone there. Well, it's not just a good idea, it's mandatory, because you don't put silicone there, that's guaranteed gonna leak oil right there. So you'll see me I'll have to trim the bottom of the gasket as it's hanging down, and then I'm gonna put a little bead of silicone there. We'll drop this guy on, then the pan, and then start bolting it down. All right, here we go. All right, that's the valve train done. I got it all lubed up. I kind of went crazy with the assembly lube, but I don't know. I don't think you can have too much of that. I did go ahead and use some medium strength thread locker on these bolts. These bolts are not adjustable. This is not the adjustable setup, so I'm not going to be sitting here lashing valves or anything. I already set the preload with the push rods, and so it was just a matter of putting them all in and tightening them down and torquing them. And so you can see they're all locked in now, ready to go. This engine has this little thing in the middle. This is a balance shaft. If you saw in the previous video, I just got rid of the gear for that because the double roller chain needed the clearance. I'm going to run it without this. I'm not worried about vibration. This camshaft is supposed to have pretty decent chop or lope. I think vibrations are going to be the least thing I'm worried about. Some guys will knock this whole shaft out and then come back here and actually plug the oil galley. I didn't want to deal with all that because you're talking about now you're drilling and tapping, and who knows if a shaving gets down in there, and I didn't have this thing completely torn down and sent to a machine shop. So I'm just abandoning this in there. It'll be perfectly fine in there, but the nice thing about leaving it in there is it doesn't expose the oil passage here, and so therefore I don't have to plug it. So I'm not going to lose oil pressure or anything. It should all function exactly the same. Let's see, next up we're going to be working on getting the lower intake and the upper intake plenum in. I will be back once I get all that stuff caught up. All right. Okay, this is the lower intake manifold. I went ahead and just taped everything off, all the surfaces that matter, and I also plugged any of the holes where the coolant is going to run through, and then just blasted out in between here. I just wanted to take a minute. It really didn't take very long in the sandblaster, just because I was only working on these outer areas, and I just wanted it to look a little nicer for when I put it on the nice painted motor. I've got to do the upper intake plenum, and I'll be sandblasting that one. I'll drag that out for you in a minute. Here is the upper intake plenum. Back when I got this car, as you saw, it came with nothing on the motor. So I had to source a lot of parts, just trying to piecemeal this thing together. I did have an intake plenum for a 98, came off of that 98 car. Unfortunately, it didn't work for the 02 because they changed it between 98 and 02. This part this is where your throttle body connects. It was actually canted over and down to meet the 98 airbox, where these ones are more straightforward, just like the V8 cars intake, where they put their airboxes on the V8 cars. So I had to swap it out. I went and got it at a junkyard. It had already been painted red when I got it, and I just did a cheap, quick paint job. I basically just scuffed it up. Didn't even do a good job of that, and I hosed it with black. I think what I'm going to do is try to tape off all the vital parts. I'm going to remove the purge solenoid map sensor, and then back here I've got a vacuum port for the brake booster and PCV valve. I'll probably pull that off and tape it off, and then maybe just repaint this cap because these bolts kind of rusted all up on there. They need some help too. So we're just going to kind of give it the same treatment. Once I get everything taped off, the plan is going to be to throw it in the sandblaster and see if I can get some of this paint off of here, and we'll start working on getting her cleaned up. Okay, it's been a couple of days. I've got a big mess in here. We had an impending storm. At least the news made it sound like doom. It turned out to be nothing, but I pushed a bunch of cars in here, so everything's kind of a mess. I'm getting back on the engine tonight. Tonight I'm working on fuel injectors, and I just want to go over that real quick. I mentioned in a previous video, the original engine that I just took out of this car, I actually got from a 1998 donor. That's where I got this fuel rail, and it's also what came with these fuel injectors. I looked it up. I think these are called Jetsonic. I'm probably saying that wrong, or Jetronic fuel injectors. I think they might have been EV1. You'll have to forgive me. I don't follow fuel injector sizes and generations and all that. But I did figure out that these ones from 98 flow somewhere around 20 pounds per hour. So I was like, well, the original injectors that came in the 2006 Lucerne engine are EV6. At least I think they are. So that's these ones. And these ones supposedly flow 30 pounds an hour. And I get that flow is probably not the right term. I just know that they're rated at 30 pounds an hour. And these are around 20 pounds an hour. I get that flow has a lot to do with your fuel pump and your setup and all that stuff. There's a lot of science in there. I'm not going to pretend like I know about it. I just figure 30 is probably better than 20. I was like, well, I want to use these, but I've got to use the Camaro fuel rail and not the one from the Lucerne because it won't work with the current intake manifold that I have. So I started fitting these in there, and then I fit the whole fuel rail on, and it's short. If you look real close at these injectors, and if you were to stand them up, it would become pretty obvious that this one's about a ½ inch longer than this one. And I thought that probably wasn't going to matter because the fuel rail would just sit lower, but it turns out it matters. It'll interfere with the side of the intake plenum, and these legs on here would need to be shortened. And rather than do all that fab work, I did a little research and I came up with these. These are from a company called Michigan Motorsports. ICT Billet makes some too. These were for about $45, and the ICT Billet ones were like closer to $70. They're just little bits of billet aluminum. It's been machined and all that. And all it is just an extension hat. Your fuel injector goes in here. And let me see if I can do this one-handed just to sort of demonstrate. Here's the fuel injector that I need to extend. This little hat, already got some petroleum jelly on there. It just slides down over that. And then the whole system mounts in here the way it's supposed to. And I've got one installed right here. Some light over here. There's your hat in the rail and then the extension. Now I went and test fit this already, so I know it's going to work. Some of you probably already noticed, but the plugs on these are different. Hold it in the light so you can see a little better. So the plugs are different. So that means on the wire harness that came out of the car, I've got to do an adapter. If you look at this plug is for the injectors that would have come in the car in 2002. And I'm sitting here with 98 injectors and 2006 injectors. And the way I originally got around that when I had this motor in the car is I got these adapters, they look like this, that adapt from this style plug to the Jetronic ones. Well, now I'm switching them out. Basically, I've had to get new wire adapters. Yeah, I get that I could probably de-pin this stuff and sit here and I think this was like 20 bucks on Amazon, maybe less. It was worth spending the money to just get an adapter than sit there and tediously sit and de-pin. And I've not been very good at de-pinning these things for some reason. Like I always jack it up somehow. Basically, this is going to make it so that the EV6s will run on the 2002 harness. So just a little breakdown on that in case someone was interested, in case you're looking at maybe upgrading injectors in your car. I guess technically this is a bit of an upgrade because we're going to a different pound an hour. These EV6s, we'll try those and see how they do. I highly doubt that I'm going to have any seat of the pants feel and difference on those or anything like that. But I think that later on, if I want to tune this differently, I'll have an opportunity there to maybe run a little more fuel. All right, I'm going to start getting these put on here and installed on the motor. you're still with me, just want to say I appreciate you. It's a long video. I'm still kind of trying to figure out how to edit these down and cut the fat off. So thanks for sticking with me. In the first part, I mentioned headers, and then I didn't bring them out and show them to you. So these are them. These are stainless. I can't remember the name brand on them. I can assure you that they are not name brand. But it's a full kit, fits this car, and they come with everything you need. Provisions for your your upstream and your downstream O2 sensors. It's got all the crossover pipes, gaskets, hardware, everything you need to make this happen. I discovered when I drug out the stainless hardware that came for it, it was 3/8 size bolts, which are too big because the ones on at least this engine are 5/16. So delayed me a couple of days while I ran around trying to find some stainless bolts that would work. I'm gonna go ahead and hang these on here. Just do a little time lapse of me doing that, and then I'm gonna wrap this video and get it posted. In the next one, part 3, I'm gonna be getting this engine dropped on the cradle, stuffed back in the car, and with any luck, we'll get her fired off and see how she sounds. I'm looking forward to seeing what this cam is gonna sound like. Once again, appreciate you hanging out. We'll see you in part 3.